Alrighty, my friends, so this is the second part of the video that I'm making for class 3 for the Seneca students, and this is actually my third take making this video because the screen recording software has been messing up and destroying the video. And so if this one doesn't work, then I'm going home. I'll try it again tomorrow. I rebooted, we'll see what happens. So, we're going to talk about the production skills portion of class 3. So, in this particular class, we actually looked at a way that you can make your projects much more efficient to work in. And we looked at a technique called packages that is going to allow you to organize your code but also work with other developers and use code that they've written. This is really handy. There's a lot of great stuff out there that you can find, but in order to use it, you're going to need to understand packages a little bit. So in our project, we're actually making use of a package now. And I'll mention that if you want to grab the files, they're up on Basecamp in the Seneca 2010 project. And there's a message there called Class 3 Notes you can take a look at, and it has associated with it a zip file in which you can grab the files that we're looking at. So when you do that and you break it open, you're going to find inside of there a folder structure that looks a little bit different than the structure that we've been working in already. So there's my project FLA, and there's my Flash Develop file that we're very familiar with by now. But you can see what is not in here is any ActionScript files. You're not going to find a Swift file in there either. So where did they go? Well, you will find two new folders here called the source and deploy. When you are working on a Flash file, basically what happens is you write code that gets pulled in by the compiler, which then spits out a binary file for you, a Swift. It's really handy being able to keep the two sides of that process a little bit separated. On one hand, you have all these source files. You have these PSDs, sound files, fonts, all kinds of images and so forth that Flash needs. And on the other hand, you have, what you need to deliver to your client. You have what you need to FTP up to a location in order to make a site live or an application live. And so what we've done is we've created a very clear separation between those two things. If you look inside of the deploy folder, you can see, well, there's our Swift file. And so we're going to show you how you can set up Flash in a way that it will automatically put your deliverables into one folder here. So you're not going to have to keep dragging and dropping them and so forth. Now that's important because at this point, our application is going to start getting a little bit more sophisticated. Now the whole idea of object-oriented programming is that you write small, what is called encapsulated classes, where each class is easy to look at, easy to understand, and really serves just one purpose. Now, it's the combination of lots of those little mini programs that is going to let you make something pretty sophisticated and pretty cool to look at. But as a result, you can imagine that if all of those were just sitting alongside the FLA, it would quickly get very, very disorganized. So instead, what we do is we set up this second folder, the source folder, and inside of that we see a very specific folder structure, and inside of that is our main project. Now if that looks familiar to you, jump back into the code and you're going to see that com.oddlystudios, so we're now using this package feature up top here, that actually matches the folder structure. So if we go back to the source, you see that there's com Oddly Studios and inside is main project. So back in our code, the compiler is actually going to check and make sure that this piece of code, this class, is sitting inside of the com/Oddly Studios folders. Now that's significant because that is going to allow you to have your own little spot where you can keep all of your code. there's a naming convention for these folders that you really should follow. And basically, it is based on your URL, your domain name. So, in my case, because I work at oddlystudios.com, what we do is we work backwards to figure out what my package name is going to be. So we take the com and then we put Oddly Studios after that. Now that's really nice because let's say, for instance, I'm working on this project and then I send it to someone else and then that person sends it to you and you kind of inherit this project and you get inside there and you run into some questions or some problems. Well, chances are you could look at the package name and you could go to oddlystudios.com and look for some contact info there, and then hopefully you get a hold of the developer that worked on this thing, so you could actually send me an email and ask me some questions about that. That is super handy, and you will find that developers are pretty good this way. Like, they're actually usually pretty helpful if you ask them some kind of question about the code that they've written. Developers like talking about the code that they've done, usually. So do try and follow that custom. So for instance, if your site was somebody.net, well, your package wouldn't look like mine. Your package would look like net.somebody. So that's kind of an overview of the folder structure that we are using, but that is only one step that we have to make use of in order to get compiling our code in a package. The next part of it is letting Flash know about it. Okay, so Flash Develop is fine with it. It sees, okay, our class is in com.oddly studios. That's great. That's all good. But if we were to just compile the Flash file right now, we might run into a problem. And the reason for that is that if we go back to our main folder, by default, the FLA will look for the code in the same folder that the FLA is sitting in, so the root. Well, we've changed that. We've actually moved it into this source folder here. So what we got to do is let Flash know that we've done that so that the compiler knows where to look. So if we jump into Flash and we go to the published settings right here, then it's going to bring up this dialog, and if you click on the Flash tab, this is weird, it's a little bit buried here, but if you click on the Flash tab and then you go into the settings right beside ActionScript 3 there, that's going to bring up another dialog box, and that has the option to add a source path. So you can see that I've actually added two paths here, and these are relative paths. They're relative to where your FLA is located. So the dot, that stands for the same folder that your FLA is sitting in. So looking at the two paths that I've put in here, you can see that when Flash goes to compile, the first place it's going to look for its code is in the same folder. So no change there. But you can see I've added a second path that says, if you don't find the code in the same folder, go ahead and look inside the source folder. See that? Because we've got ./src. That's a path. That's a relative path. So now, when we would go to compile the thing, if we look back into our structure here, well, here's our FLA. Is it going to find the com folder right here? No. So the next thing it's going to do is look in the next class path. So it's going to go inside of the source, and there it does find the com folder. So now it's off to the right start. It's going to be able to drill down inside com, Oddly Studios, and find the code that it should compile against. So there's just one more place that we need to update our document, and that's actually in the document class itself in the properties panel.